Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the first of a series of conversations that CalICH will be hosting to discuss the Governor's Executive Order N-1-24. As a reminder, this briefing is being recorded and is meant for city and county leaders, as well as members of CalICH's council, our advisory committee, and our lived experience advisory board. We will only be responding to questions or comments from representatives of those entities in today's meeting. If you're a member of the public or press, you are welcome to continue to join us this afternoon. But again, we will only be taking questions from city and county leadership and members of CalICH's respective bodies. Next slide, please. All right, we will start with some brief introductions before reviewing the agenda. I am Megan Marshall. I'm the Executive Officer for the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. Just for everyone's awareness, I'm joined today by my Directors of Statewide Policy, Cody Ziegler, my Director of Local Initiatives, Courtney Tacker, and our Data and Research Director, Emery Reif-Snyder, as well as our Deputy Secretary of Homelessness, Dakshika Wickrama. And we are happy to have you all here today. So just a really brief overview of the agenda. Sort of the intentions for today's webinar. It is to provide a safe space for folks in the respective bodies that I've given an outline of to share their responses to the Executive Order N-1-24, as well as for CalICH to share how it can be a partner as local jurisdictions are considering adopting similar policies or ordinances. We'll have some grounding messaging from Secretary Moss, who's not with us today, but has a very hopeful message that was recorded in video that we'll take a look at. We also wanted to provide an overview of CalICH for those of you who are not familiar with us as an entity and not as a grantee. So with that, and then we do want to spend the bulk of our time here this afternoon together for you all to ask questions and provide your comment on the executive order. So again, this is the first of a series of conversations that we hope to have with you all. So with that, we'll get moving on through the agenda. Next slide, please. And Cody, if you can play Secretary Moss's message for us. Which I can see her lips moving. Not sure if folks can hear that. Okay. So it looks like the audio is an issue. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. This is being recorded. The video will be available in the final posting that we'll have available for you all next week. So just again, with respect for everyone's time, we'll just move on to the next slide, please. There we go. Thank you, Cody. All right, so a really brief overview of CalICH. We were adopted in statute in 2017 as the state's leading entity to ending and preventing homelessness, and also incorporating housing first as an evidence-based practice in all of the state's funding and available programs to address homelessness in California. As you can see here, and we will not spend very much time on this slide at all, but it is a really good reminder, I think, for folks, especially those who are less familiar with CalICH, to understand where our role and responsibilities lie in our statutory mandates. And so we have 19 mandates that are outlined here for you all to see. A few that I will highlight is primarily around the identification of mainstream resources and benefits and services that can be accessed to prevent and end homelessness in California, to promote systems integration across the state system. So aside from the CalICH staff, we also, of course, have our very important council, which is made up of cabinet secretaries, department directors, all of whom oversee very important programs that are being administered in cities and in counties to address homelessness at the local level. And so CalICH's role as a coordinating body, as a convener of those very incredible system partners, I would say is the cornerstone of our existence. So, but aside from that, we are also responsible for a tremendous amount of statewide data that we have available for our homeless data integration system, which of course local HMIS reports up to. to really ground the state in an overview of the experiences of homelessness across California. So next slide, please. All right, so who we are, CalACH, aside from our 19 statutory mandates, we are a statewide facilitator, coordinator, and leader for policy development and research for the state and local jurisdictions in their work to prevent and end homelessness in California. And we're motivated by a vision of a future in which homelessness is rare, brief, and a one-time experience in order to prevent and end homelessness in California. Next slide, please. So an overview of the values that we believe in equally, no one more than the other. I'm not going to spend a tremendous time on this slide either, but really value, and I think speaks to the group that we have here with us today, meaningful partnerships with local jurisdictions, including our cities and our counties, as well as the expertise of persons with lived experience in homelessness. I believe we have several members of our lived experience advisory board here with us today, some of whom are actively experiencing homelessness. So it has been an incredible honor of mine to have those voices incorporated in the work that we do. Next slide, please. As far as who CalACH serves, we serve our state departments, including our council member departments and agencies, our local jurisdictions, including cities, counties, COCs, and tribal governments, as well as members of the public. You'll notice the asterisk there for public, and that CalACH does not administer benefits or provide direct services. So we are simply here as a convener for those who do offer those direct services. So next slide, please. And in terms of the services offered, which we'll get into a little bit more deeply throughout this time together, we are responsible for coordinating and developing relationships across the respective areas that we serve, policy development, data and research, and as technical assistance offerings as well, which we're very happy to lend ourselves in this as a thought partner and technical assistance as it relates to the executive order. So with that, let's talk about the executive order in the next slide, please. I think it's really important to start off very transparently what the order is and what the order is not. So what the order is a directive for state departments to develop internal policies to urgently and humanely address encampments on state property. What it is not is an order to immediately clear all encampments on state property, and it is not an order to issue criminal citations for camping on state property. Next slide, please. What the order is a call for cities and counties to adopt local policies and prioritization criteria to address encampments and to use flexible state dollars to provide effective resolution. And again, what it is not is an order for law enforcement to criminalize homelessness. Next slide, please. So as far as CalACH's role and next steps in these series of conversations that we'll be having, we have an August 29th webinar where we're hoping to get into discussions of best practices in developing local policies and prioritization criteria to address encampments, including the use of flexible state dollars. That's going to be a much more boots on the ground, detailed conversation than what we're having here today. And from there, we're hoping to have focused and flexible technical assistance offerings for state departments as well as local partners. If you are in early stages or in active stages of developing policies in your jurisdictions, whether a city or county, around how to address encampments, and you'd like for CalACH to be a thought partner in that space, you are more than welcome to reach out to us directly. The email address is provided there on the screen. We'll certainly leave it in the chat. But we are going to be reaching out to a handful of cities and counties directly after the conclusion of the August 29th webinar. And from there, if this is of interest or of help to those of you serving in city and county governments, we're hoping to launch a series of communities of practice highlights where you can hear from one another and in terms of your local experiences, things that are working, things that are not working, partnerships that are essential for success, and where CalACH and the state can be a partner in that space. Next slide, please. So I'd like to use the remainder of our time together to open it up for questions and comments, again, from city and county representatives and members of Cal ICH's respective bodies. So if you can please use the raise hand function, I'll call your name, I'll take you off mute. If you can introduce yourself and who you are representing today. Please keep in mind we have a very large audience, so we will not have a timer. We'll stay with you as long as you all would like to stay with us. But please keep in mind the large audience that we have when you pose your questions or comments. So with that, I will open it up. It looks like we have 3 hands raised. Let's see here. First, we have Javon Wilkes. I'm going to take you off mute.
Thank you so much for bringing us together to have this discussion. I want to highlight, I'll keep my comments brief, that we have to make sure that any youth, children, and families that are within these encampments, when it comes to the policy, that we make sure that there's a pathway for them to have access to the needs that help them to move forward from the experience of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Javon. And Javon is a member of our advisory committee. So again, folks, when I take you off mute, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and who you're representing. But thank you, Javon. We'll move on next to John Janssens. John, you should be able to come off mute. All right, John, apologies. We're going to move on. We can circle back, or you can leave your comment in the chat as well. We'll move on now to Noah.
Hi, yeah, and my question is in both chat and Q&A, and that's the governor has now issued very clear threats to local municipalities of an impending removal of funding. So I think it would behoove us greatly to be aware of precisely what funding is at risk and what measures need to be met in order to prevent that funding from being removed, so we can begin strategic planning immediately. And on a personal note, I just have to say it's extraordinarily demoralizing to have this messaging sent this way to local communities that have been striving diligently over the past few years to make a difference. So that's a personal note and not jurisdictional.
Thank you, Noah. And again, folks, as I take you off mute, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, where you're from. Would appreciate that just for context, but thank you, Noah.
Sorry, my name is Noah Whitaker. I'm the Homeless Initiatives Program Coordinator for the County of Tulare.
Thank you, Noah. All right, we'll move on to Sharon Report. Sharon, you should be able to come off mute. All right, Sharon, we'll circle back to you, or you can leave your question or comment in the chat. We'll move on now to Emily Halkin.
Hi, thank you. Emily Halkin, I'm the Director of the Department of Homeless Services and Housing in Sacramento County. And I was wondering if Cal ICH has been thinking about or is intending to issue any direction for jurisdictions who have existing grants, ERF grants, that either haven't been fully realized or spent, and if the state does take action on camps that were identified for those funding sources, if those funds are going to be redirected, or if there's going to be direction for us on how to spend those if state actions remove the camps that we were targeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And so I'm sure as many of you are aware, certainly you are if you are an ERF recipient, But all of the grants that were originally administered by Cal ICH have transitioned to our sister Department of Housing and Community Development. That being said, Cal ICH remains a thought partner in terms of addressing exactly those issues, Emily. And so we'll be working with HCD, over the course of the next several months to identify communities who are I use the word struggling, but who are struggling to work with the encampments of original intention in their application for whatever reason, right? Whether it's through natural disaster or otherwise. And so no particular guidance. We don't anticipate issuing any particular guidance in the next few weeks, but we'll be working very closely with HCD to do targeted technical assistance for those communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I have some letters here. So PWREBG, I'm going to unmute you. All right, we can certainly circle back. John, I see your hand is raised again. John, are you able to come off mute? All right, we will circle back. I see Ryan Gruber.
Hi, Ryan Gruber, Nevada County Health and Human Services Agency Director. It's good to see you, Megan. I'm wondering if you can provide a little bit more specificity in terms of what's meant by flexible state funding. If that means HAP funding, I'll note that in our community, funding largely pays for shelter and interim housing, and redirecting that would be enormously counterproductive from the perspective of addressing encampments. So are you referring to competitive grants, realignment, or something else local? Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Always good to see you in Nevada County, folks. So primarily, yeah, I mean, HAP is by and large the state's most flexible investment in homelessness, but understanding that those plans have been submitted, are going through the various approval stages. But where Cal ICH can be, I think, of use to communities who are looking, for other opportunities for funding, whether that's philanthropic, private dollars, etc. Cal ICH can be a thought partner there as well. We've already assisted a very small number, but it's something that we're looking forward to getting into the larger space of supporting communities who are applying for private and, as I said, philanthropic applications. So. But the existing flexible pot primarily exists, yes, within HAP, ERF, of course, but Cal ICH is here to be a thought partner in exploring other opportunities as well. All right. Ludmilla.
Hello, Ludmilla Bade, on the advisory committee. I'm wondering if I feel it would be great to have, and much less expensive, to have places where people can go, especially while they are on a waiting list, where if people could be in small manageable communities of like 5 to 40 people on land, safe parking spaces, a vacant industrial thing, any place where people can go. The big problem is so many people are on waiting lists, and it's a big mistake to have those people just have to go, out in the bushes someplace or in encampments. Much less expensive and much more productive to have someplace where people can go than just being told they're not welcome anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludmilla. We're going to circle back up to the top here. I have PWREBG. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. All right, apologies, folks. So in these functions, when I ask somebody to unmute themselves, you should see a notification that allows you to do that. But we'll circle back to PWR as well. But Noah, I see your hand is up again.
Yep, identifying again, Noah Whitaker, Homeless Initiatives Program Coordinator, County of Tulare. And my question is, what efforts or advocacy is being done to obtain more housing vouchers, such as housing choice vouchers from the federal government to aid local communities? Because at the moment, that's one of our biggest binds. It doesn't matter how much street outreach we do, how much encampment moving we do. There's not vouchers available for long-term permanent housing. And that really does come, at least traditionally, from HUD. So is the state planning to start providing housing vouchers or funding for housing? When I did our calculations of our currently unhoused population from our 2024 point in time, and I multiplied that by the city and county's housing elements, the median cost of rent, we would need between $12.4 and $14.8 million per year annually. Just this year, not taking into account inflation or cost of living increases, simply to pay the median cost of rent. And we do not receive that level of funding. So I'm just curious if there are any advocacy efforts to get more housing vouchers.
Thank you again, Noah. I'll ask our Deputy Secretary of Homelessness, Dakshika Wikrama. Dakshika, if you could come off mute
Yes.
To share perhaps all the all inside work that's being done.
Yeah, no, Noah, great question. And as you know, this is something that California and local communities have been working for a long time. So I can't guarantee anything, Noah, but this is some of the advocacy that the state, at least my boss, the Secretary of BCSH, continues to do whenever she interacts with folks at HUD. And I will say, Megan mentioned there's a federal initiative called All Inside that is going to sunset in December, which allowed the state as well as some other jurisdictions across the nation to connect with federal partners to see if there could be any regulatory fixes or things that didn't require more funding from the feds. But, you know, on your point, Noah, I think we are looking forward to seeing if there is potentially with an administration that's coming in the next few years, there have been some proposals to do more around the housing side, but this is going to continue to be a challenge, Noah. So I'm not going to say there's an instant fix on that, but we will continue to see how the federal government can help us in that regard. Because as you know, I'm sure in California, 1 out of 8 people who are eligible for federal vouchers receive a voucher. It's 1 out of 4 in the nation, but even starker in California. But your point is well taken, Noah.
Thank you, Dakshika. Thank you, Noah. We'll move to Jonathan Russell. Jonathan, you should be able to come off mute.
Thanks, Megan. Good to see you, and thanks for hosting the space. Jonathan Russell, Director of Alameda County Housing and Homelessness Services. Question around the executive order, specifically in alignment, you know, the call to adopt policies aligned with Caltrans policy. How can that be made square with Housing First in this way, which, as you said, is also something that Cal ICH is charged to uphold, where in which that policy includes, you know, minimum 48 hours notice unless there's exigent circumstances and not necessarily an offer of housing. So is there a plan to sort of to square those in the future guidance you come up with? And if so, how might that be different than what many communities are already doing, which is seeking to support resolutions when and where housing is available, and the main problem being, as others have said, there's not housing available to do it in light of Housing First.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Good to see you again as well. In the August 29th webinar, we are going to be delving into best practices and the development of criteria for locals to identify encampments that are of priority concern for their jurisdiction. understanding that there are some nuances that need to be, to your point, squared or reconciled with the governor's call to use the Caltrans policy as sort of a starting point. I will say though, just with the communities of that I'm familiar with that have already established local policies, I think City of Berkeley, who's a neighbor to you all, of course, in Alameda County, have established something very similar, but is in alignment with Housing First. And so looking forward to a more robust conversation on August 29th. But thank you for lifting that up. All right, we'll move on to Alex. Alex, you should be able to come off mute.
Great. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Well, first, I did want to make sure that Noah and Tanya's question in the chat gets answered to kind of better understand that those comments about state potentially withholding funding. I think it's important that we be crystal clear about what that means and if that's, you know, if there's policy behind that being developed. But do just want to say a couple things. First, you know, encampments are about human beings that need housing, right? They're not about piles of trash, and we need to continue to always keep human beings and their needs at the center of the conversation. The second piece is the only sustainable solution. I think many of us on this call, I think we all know, is about the only sustainable solution to an encampment is to connect people to housing and services, right? And there's a lot of different ways providers go about doing that work. There can be a lot of different timelines to appropriately work with an encampment to move everybody into housing. I don't know of anybody doing successful encampment resolution that sees 48 to 72 hours as kind of an appropriate or sufficient timeline there. So would just encourage the council to lift up folks that are doing it the right way and that are seeing a lot of success. And then just the last thing I wanted to add, I think we've seen from looking at communities that have successfully addressed homelessness around the country that the only way we're going to do this, the only way we are successful is when different levels of government, city, county, state, are working in collaboration, in partnership, and in trust with each other, not spending time pointing fingers and saying whose fault it is. We all have an important role to play here. Thanks so much for this webinar, and looking forward to the webinar on the 29th.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, understand that there are questions and comments in the chat and also in the Q&A function. Just want to take folks that have their hand raised who want to offer a verbal comment before we move there. But thank you for that, Alex. Moving on down, Mary Maldonado. Mary, I did see in the chat that you said you weren't able to come off mute, but let's try it. Let's try it here. Mary, you able? There you are.
Yes. Hi. You guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so my name's Mary Maldonado. I'm from California Interagency Council on Homelessness and California, Hanford, California. My opinion is of it, to be honest with you guys. Like, so I've been experiencing homelessness for the past year and 4 months, and I feel like there should be some, not saying that, you know, we should be given a handout of an encampment, but the thing is if there's not one, if they're not allowed, they're not allowed to have one. I feel like not only are they going to have them anyways, but they're going to be even bigger than what the community or the city, you know, is actually willing to or being able to deal with. I feel like probably what should happen, you know, like maybe even a proposal to the city from, you know, from I guess the homelessness, as in who maybe somebody can donate some land for the time being. It wouldn't have to be like the permanent thing they give up the land, but somewhere where we can have where an encampment that is safe with not only like that, but resources from the welfare office there, you know, caseworkers on the grounds, so that everybody can connect to resources that they might need at that time. Even maybe, you know, even probation can be there at the same time, which is they can, you know, run their names and start fixing stuff on their backgrounds or whatnot, you know, at the time. But I think something like that would be better, because I feel like why go about it blind? You guys can either have control of the whole encampment altogether, or you can have no control of it. My thoughts is at least put it somewhere where you guys choose, if you chose to, so that, you know, they're not the ones making the choice and what to do, and you that can control kind of the crime, or at least predict what kind of crime will be happening in that area due to where the location is put, the encampment is what I mean. I'm not sure if it made sense, but I went kind of fast. I'm nervous. That was it.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, and again, for those of you who didn't hear, Mary is a member of our Lived Experience Advisory Board, and we appreciate you for making the time, Mary, and sharing your thoughts with us. We'll move to Karen Roper. Karen, you should be able to come off mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine.
I am Karen Roper. I work for the city of Corona and oversee all the homeless programs as the homeless solutions manager, and also oversee all the homeless programs for the city of Norco. I do serve as the chair of the Riverside County Continuum of Care, but I am here today with my city hats on. And I think all of us together, it's nice to come together. There's obviously more at play here besides the governor's executive order, because it came on the heels of the Supreme Court's decision, which we know overturned Martin versus Boise regarding the requirement to offer shelter. So I think many people had a little bit of anxiety between the Supreme Court's decision and then the executive order in terms of what the messaging would be. So I wanted to encourage you all to know what we've been doing here locally, because I do feel very encouraged. We have successful encampment response funding. We've done amazing things in our western region of the county, all the cities collaborating together with the county, and we've been doing encampment response. And so what we've tried to do is take those best practices and working through our local Cal cities in Riverside County. In fact, we met today and are looking at convening meetings and panels. We're going to start with a panel of best practices to encourage those other cities who may not be actively involved with state funding like encampment response funding, to remind everybody about the fact that best practices are what really works for cities to be good neighbors together. And because we know that the criminal justice system did not change, and that arresting and jailing and tickets, people can be out in 2 to 4 hours. So the real solutions are the best practices that the state has seen all of us do through the encampment response funding, through HAP funding, and all of the other funding sources that we use. So I feel very encouraged that we're having these very honest, open dialogues with our cities. Our county and Riverside County, and Tanya Torno is, part of that. They're great partners with us, but I think it's incumbent upon cities to begin to have these discussions. This isn't about, busing people and dumping them off. And from a criminalized aspect, it's don't forget that best practices actually save local government money, and that cities need to be good partners together and have those honest and open dialogues. Because I think sometimes the message of you don't have to offer shelter anymore, you're off the hook, that's something that we don't want to be promulgated across the state or the nation for that matter. So I just want you all to know we are really encouraged about the conversations that we're having with our cities in Riverside County in collaboration with the Riverside County folks. So I feel a lot better. We had such a productive meeting today. We're going to have multiple meetings with our city partners. And Cal ICH, thank you for bringing us together. I think we need to continue to be honest about these challenges and open and do this together the right way, not go back 10 years in history and lose forward momentum. So I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense, Karen. And what I'm hearing from you and probably Tanya is that Riverside and its respective cities is volunteering to be a community of practice, highlighted after our August 29th webinar. So we'll be in touch. But thank you. With that, I believe we have one more hand before we move on. It is Tanya Torno. Tanya, you should be able to come off mute now.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon. My question is really around the governor's original announcement. He referenced wanting to hold counties and cities responsible for outcomes specific to addressing homelessness in encampments. I think it's really important, as Karen emphasized, we've been really intentional about building a strong system of care. And when we look at our HMIS data, everything is pointing to a strong system. I mean, we've been able to increase housing placements within the last year, 2 years, by 65%. But our biggest challenge, as I'm sure is the challenge that other communities across California are facing, counties and cities, is that we simply cannot keep up with inflow. And even though we've invested a great deal in developing affordable housing, and while some of those have become live, there's hundreds, thousands more that will take more time before their doors open. So I think our biggest concern is around how the governor will look to measure performance, as this would not be a good time to take away money from counties and cities who have developed strong systems, again, are utilizing Housing First and doing their best to coordinate regional efforts. So any guidance that you can provide around that would certainly be helpful, and certainly any advocacy to not penalize counties who are seeing increases due to really influences outside of their control would be helpful. But thank you again for hosting this. We appreciate being at the table.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. And I understand and appreciate, and I've seen a few comments of similar concern in the chat. No guidance immediately available. As I said, this is the first of a series of conversations that we hope to engage with our city and county partners, as well as our state partners. And so, as we're uncovering more, certainly in what is working for cities and counties who, to your point, who are doing the hard work and who are seeing success in areas, starting with the uplifting of those successes. And so, unfortunately, nothing specific we can offer today. Just ask that you all hang in here with us and make yourselves available to exactly these kinds of opportunities to share and uplift good practices. So thank you, Tanya. I do see we have one more hand raised, and Sharon, before I'm going to take you off mute. Hopefully this works.
Yeah.
Sharon, you should be able. There you are. Okay.
Great. I didn't get the box the first time, so thank you for giving me another chance. Sharon Report with Corporation for Supportive Housing, and I'm on the advisory committee. Just to repeat what others have said, I do appreciate you having the webinar and the session next week. And I appreciate your comments and clarifications, and do agree the executive order doesn't go as far as I think what a lot of media reports suggested. However, I do think that the comments of the governor have been really damaging to the good work that Cal ICH is trying to accomplish. And so I would suggest having some educational briefings with legislators as well. Because I do feel like some of those comments have implied that state investment has not been effective, that I think there's been conflicting figures thrown out about how much the state investment has actually been. And so I think probably a lot of us would take issue with the totals the governor has cited, but it does kind of give a message that funding does not work, or that local communities have not been housing people, when in fact, as you all have reported repeatedly, more people are being housed now more than ever before in California. So I think repeating that message to state legislators, having a best practice session with state legislators that's public, I think could counter some of the damaging effects of the messaging. I do strongly disagree with the executive order. I think it is promoting practices that are very traumatizing to people. And I love Ludmila's comment about where are people supposed to go. I think there are very effective interventions that I'm sure you'll talk about next week. And so I'm looking forward to that best practices dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and love the suggestion of engaging our legislative colleagues as well. Certainly an opportunity there for our members of the advisory committee to join us in that effort and developing the content. So appreciate that suggestion. All right, with that, I do not see any additional hands raised, but I do recognize and acknowledge there's a number of questions and comments in the chat, as well as in the Q&A field. One in particular was easily answered, just that, yes, this is being recorded. Yes, the slideshow will be available on our website along with this recording. We will start an FAQ document as well to capture all of the questions that we're not able to offer answers to in this space, and perhaps not even in the space of August 29th, but appreciate your all's commitment to joining us today, and your commitment to the conversation. Very much appreciated. Cody, if you can take us to that final slide. This is just to wrap us up and to thank everyone again for their time and commitment behind this work. Again, this will be available on our website early next week, and we look forward to seeing and hearing from you all on the 29th. So thank you all again, and have a great day.